Welcome back, everybody. We are here at the MIT Bitcoin and Freedom Tech Expo. I am joined right now with Mauricio di Bartolomeo, CSO of LEDN. Just gave an incredible presentation on your experience in Venezuela, where your first interaction with Bitcoin was actually running a mining operation there. You've obviously since transitioned to running over the most successful Bitcoin borrowing and lending company in the space. But let's actually start with the presentation a little bit. Brought me to tears. I've personally lived in Venezuela, so I understood some of the realities you were talking about. But let's talk about sort of how intimately you understand the value proposition of Bitcoin based on your experience.
Yeah, thanks, Frank, and always a pleasure and a big honor to be here. I take great pride in being able to come and share the story, because I think people, when you talk about financial inclusion and you think about, Bitcoin being a lifeline for certain people in different parts of the world, a lot of times this ends up being some abstract concept that people can't really, yes, sure, it's probably helping someone somewhere, but you can't really put it into an actual story or an actual person.
Yep.
And what happened in my family is when we started mining Bitcoin and our mines, we were successful growing mines, helping other people build their mines. And then the regime in 2018, early 2018, as many people know now, did basically a witch hunt against miners. We were one of the people that they came after. And my family, my brother at the time, ended up having to make the decision to exit the country that night. And the only reason we were able to, or he was able to escape, and then the entire family relocate internationally, was because by the time that they got to him, we had now at that point transitioned basically all of our businesses to Bitcoin mining. Mm-hmm. And yes, they took some of our ASICs, but they could never touch the Bitcoin. And one of the big things that allowed my family or my brother to make that decision to leave that night was that he had the means to rebuild already in an uncensorable, unstoppable, unseizable asset.
Yep.
That he could then port with him, and which we did. And so I've lived through, or my family has lived through, what the promise of Bitcoin is, which is a money that is apolitical, that will be there when government will fail, or when government does fail, you will always be able to rely on this. Mm-hmm. It worked for us.
Yeah.
I understand the value prop. And once I saw what it did for Venezuela, and I looked at the world at large, I realized that many people were going to need this eventually.
Yep.
And the power of this instrument, once you understand it, is it captures your mind. No, and that was what it did for me. Yeah. Once I saw what it did for Venezuelans, I couldn't stop thinking about what this tech was going to do for the rest of the world and how to get involved. And at the time, I only knew how to mine it, and that's what we ended up doing. But thanks to that, we found some pain points that Bitcoiners had, not just in mining, but in other places, mm-hmm. with lack of access to financing. So that story kind of dovetails into us remaining Bitcoiners, staying in the industry, and building something to give back or to solve a problem, which turned into the business that, it's what LEDN has become today. My brother works with me today. My parents have been supportive from day one. My dad was a Bitcoiner before I was.
Okay.
So for us, Bitcoin's a family business.
Yeah, very, very cool. So you left Venezuela a little bit earlier than your brother, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
You end up in Canada. You started a mining operation there.
Yes.
You're there with your Bitcoin, realizing, hey, I don't really want to sell any of this Bitcoin to expand my mining operation. So you created the product that has now become LEDN, or maybe you called it LEDN back then as well. You created this product to meet your own need, essentially, the problem that you were facing. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So when we were operating the mine, so the beginning, building it or starting the mine, you buy the ASICs and you get a site and you do the electrical upgrades and the networking, and then you go up and running, right? Then you start making the Bitcoin, and you have Bitcoin revenues, fiat expenses.
Right.
So then the first question is, oh man, I have these fiat expenses. Mm-hmm. Do I want to sell this thing that's appreciating at double digits month over month? And the answer is always no. But you don't really have a choice. So you have to come up with the cash somehow. And the first time you sell it, and you're like, oh man, okay, I sold it, I paid for it. Obviously, selling it was not the best idea. The price kept going up.
Right.
You are no longer holding the Bitcoin, and so now you're off. And the same thing happened when you had to upgrade equipment cycles. So you would have to send money to Bitmain and have these 9-month wait times for the equipment to be shipped. The equipment had to be paid in Bitcoin, or basically had to be paid upfront.
Okay.
And it basically, you lost the appreciating power of the Bitcoin for the entire year. And by the time you got it back, it wasn't generating what you wanted it to generate because difficulty had gone up. And the thing is, every time you sold Bitcoin to pay for something, you tried to buy it back, you never got the same amount. And so we really wanted, in the same way we borrowed against our property, our vehicles, any other asset, we just wanted to borrow against our Bitcoin.
Yep.
And naturally, I understood why in Venezuela that wouldn't be an option, because Venezuela has no access to any financial services.
Yep.
But when I was in Canada, I thought, certainly some financial entity or group is going to be able to finance us. And Adam and I started, inquiring and trying to see if we could get a loan backed by the Bitcoin. We were told, I still remember today, that's not an asset.
Right.
We can't touch it because it's not an asset.
Yeah.
Why would you do this? It's insane.
Yep.
That's a dumb idea, we were told.
Yep.
And we knew we wanted it. We knew we needed it. I knew the miners that I was talking to everywhere wanted it and needed it. I was talking to Bitcoin businesses outside of mining. They wanted it. And so I understood the need for it. And I also understood why you wanted to keep the Bitcoin, because I've been dealing with it now for many years. And we believed very strongly that if you put out a product out there that solved this problem, not only would it help miners in Canada, which was our first market, but Bitcoin is a global asset. It is the first asset ever that an entity in any part of the world can take from another borrower that will be uniform and equal.
Yep.
And it allows me to underwrite credit in the same risk profile.
Yep.
Meaning I can give you the same interest rates and the same quality of service, regardless of your art, where your religion is, what skin color you have.
Yep.
So in LEDN, one of the things that fills me with pride, as I mentioned, and I say this often, if you are applying for a loan from Madrid or Medellin, you're going to get the same rates, the same service.
Yep.
I don't think there's a single other entity out there that does asset-backed lending outside of Bitcoin that can say that.
Yeah, without looking into a personal profile, without taking into account at all. Yeah, a true sort of representation of financial inclusion in practice. Yeah.
Today.
Very, very inspiring. Another thing that LEDN did very well is you've been buttoned up. You've done everything right from a regulatory perspective. You've run the business correctly from a managing risk standpoint. We watched other companies that were comparable to LEDN in certain ways, whether they be BlockFi, Celsius, disappear when the bear market came around, and whatever structure they were using to make their money just sort of fell apart because of whatever, I don't know, scamminess was going on in the background, or just not really structuring the way they were offering these loans properly. Can you talk about it? We were talking about this outside just beforehand. These three really important components to running a successful Bitcoin business. You're now the biggest Bitcoin borrowing and lending platform out there. What, in your mind, what things have you done that have gotten you to this point?
It's a great question, and I'll try to give a simple and concise answer as best I can.
Yeah.
So I think when we were setting out to build LEDN or to solve this problem, we wanted to make sure it met certain criteria. And the ones that I was mentioning to you above or outside was, the number one was, this solve a problem? Like, the people actually need this? And the answer to that was yes, we needed it. We saw why it was worth it, why it was valuable.
Yep.
So it solved a big problem in our view. The second one is, can this be profitable, right? Can you actually make money offering a service of this kind? And the answer for us was yes, because it's lending is a spread business. So long as we could lend to you at a reasonable rate that you felt confident that Bitcoin was going to outperform that rate, then this product can make a lot of money.
Yep.
And at the pace that Bitcoin is going, and given the current interest rates around the world and the dynamic between weak fiat and strong Bitcoin, the business could make money.
Yep.
The third one is, can the business scale in a compliant manner? Okay? And this one's a very big, or this is an important one, because as you and I discussed, there's some businesses are missing one or the other.
Yep.
And this is where they fail to scale and to reach the size or the sort of path that businesses want, which is grow, get to scale, and get increasingly better investors, get better cost of capital, get bigger and bigger.
Right.
And so at LEDN, we always made sure that A, we solved the problem, B, the product was organically sustainable, and 3, that it could scale in a compliant way. And at LEDN, we embraced sort of regulation from day one. We've always done KYC. We understand that there are other segments in the market where KYC is not required.
Right.
We might prefer that for privacy reasons, but from a scalability perspective, for our business and the path that we took, we felt it was important to have that element in order to scale and have the sort of journey of the business that we wanted.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think in the process, you've also legitimized Bitcoin. Like you said, the issue when you went to banks initially or financial institutions and said, hey, we have this collateral, can we use it? I think LEDN is probably the premier player that's basically helped crystallize this idea of Bitcoin as a pristine collateral, right? So have you gotten that feedback from people that, essentially other financial institutions, I'm sure they've taken note of what you've done. I know you have bigger VC investors, and I'm sure all their network of people have been paying attention to what you've done. And I think scaling at the level to which you have, people taking out multi-million, tens of millions of dollars, whatever the size of the loans are, this does change the game. It's far different than, as you said, a non-KYC platform that someone might need to use for privacy purposes. There's a place for that. But you're now taking this and we're turning Bitcoin into something that's less taboo and thought about as more of just sort of a macro asset that people can use as collateral. Have you gotten this feedback from people? Have they shared that you've sort of reformed the way that they look at Bitcoin as a result?
Yeah, so many clients have, especially if you look at the trajectory of Bitcoin price and you look at our product, which helps you not sell it. We've had clients that have been borrowing from us since, 2020, 2021.
Yep.
They have done very well financially by managing their loans well. Their Bitcoin collateral is worth many, many times what it was when they first took out the loan.
Yep.
We have had guys come to us and say, thank you for building this. It's helped me materially change my stars.
Yep.
I've now been able to grow my wealth materially thanks to your service. I think it's been a combination of people come back. The average loan borrower at LEDN takes out 4 loans. Okay. And so wow. the interesting thing is you come back because the product works. And every time we see a wave of price appreciation, it's fascinating what we see at LEDN because the people that had the loans do very well and they sweep Bitcoin off the top. Of course, I think they go in their happiness of having created wealth. Whenever somebody else tells them, hey, I want to buy this car, I'm going to sell some Bitcoin, they're like, don't you dare. Go check out this LEDN service. It worked wonders for me. You should learn. And so it's funny because sometimes we see a person, with came in, took a loan, and then we start seeing basically people related to them based on like the profiles. Like they come in, like their family comes in, their brothers come in, and so it's fascinating this word of mouth. So yes, it's created this bit of a virus that basically shows you that you shouldn't be selling this thing. Right. And there's been other events that I think have reinforced this idea. In particular, the one, Michael Saylor taking out bonds to buy Bitcoin, this idea of debt to keep the Bitcoin. Yep. And the further one has been this reinforced idea of Bitcoin as a reserve asset. Right. So if the US government's telling you they're not going to sell it, if Paul Tudor Jones is telling you they're not going to sell it, if Michael Saylor is telling you they're not going to sell it, if Nayib Bukele is buying billions of dollars and no plans of selling it, at this point, you're looking at that and saying, if the top balance sheets in the planet aren't selling this thing, why should I? And so a person, you or me, can't go and offer a bond into the market, but we can come to LEDN. Right. And you can take out a loan. Yep. And at LEDN, we service people taking out loans for $500. We service publicly traded companies taking out loans to buy more Bitcoin or its treasury. Yep. And so it's a tool that is incredibly powerful. And we've now made a tool that is sophisticated enough for Michael Saylor to use in his company or similar to a product that's very similar that you can access with just $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. Yep. So this idea that you can now yourself create a similar structure to one of the most sophisticated treasury management operations in Wall Street. You can do it with a few clicks from Buenos Aires. It's a very powerful thing.
It is fun, and I think that is the big thing for this. One, it offers financial inclusion, and then two, we're sort of seeing major players do it, and now retail players are able to sort of replicate the strategy, hopefully in a very safe way. I'm not advocating for people to go out and take loans and get leverage to go heavy into their Bitcoin, but I think for those who do think about this strategically, cautiously, and manage, as you said, manage the loans that they've taken out properly, I think it's a really exciting time. As I said, the last question, I know you're constantly working on new things, maintaining what you have created, making sure all systems are running well, but offering new products. What's coming down the line for LEDN next?
You're going to see even more transparency from LEDN. Okay. I think we've led the charge with proof of reserve, open book reports, and other types of things that we've pioneered. And that bar is not going to sit still. Okay. We're going to keep moving that bar higher. So cool. I'm excited what's coming.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. Well, thank you for setting the standard you have, Mauricio. We will talk soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, everybody.